0347 a.m., Strait of Hormuz. A single A-10 Thunderbolt II cuts through the darkness, flying low, flying slow, flying alone. Two Iranian F-14 Tomcats just found the easiest kill of their careers, or so they believed. The Warthog was impossible to miss. It moved at barely 300 knots above the black water. No altitude, no aggression, no escort visible on any Iranian radar screen. A ground attack aircraft, ugly, slow, built to absorb punishment over land battlefields, somehow wandering through one of the most contested maritime choke points on the planet. The AWG-9 radar systems aboard both Tomcats painted it instantly. Clean track, perfect geometry, no electronic jamming, no defensive maneuvering, no sign the American pilot even knew he was being watched. For the Iranian crews, this wasn't just an opportunity, it was a gift. They pushed their throttles forward and began to close. 3:51 a.m. Let's talk about what an F-14 Tomcat actually is, because understanding what happened next requires understanding exactly how much firepower Iran just put into the sky. Grumman built the F-14 as a fleet defense interceptor in the late 1960s, and they did not build it to lose. Variable geometry swing wings, twin Pratt & Whitney TF-30 turbofans pushing it past Mach 2.4, an AWG-9 radar that could track 24 separate targets simultaneously and fire on 6 of them at the same time, and hanging beneath its fuselage AIM-54 Phoenix missiles, long, sleek, brutally capable weapons with a range exceeding 100 nautical miles, designed to kill Soviet bombers before they could threaten a carrier group. Against a slow, non-maneuvering A-10 at close range, the Phoenix wasn't even necessary. Any weapon aboard that aircraft would do the job. Iran received 79 of these fighters before the 1979 revolution ended the relationship with Washington permanently. Decades of sanctions followed.
Spare parts dried up. Western maintenance contracts evaporated overnight. And yet, through improvised components, reverse-engineered systems, and a maintenance culture built on pure determination, Iran kept its Tomcats flying. The crews who fly them today are not amateurs. They are the sharpest interceptor pilots in the Iranian Air Force, flying the most capable aircraft their country possesses. And on this particular morning, they were looking at what appeared to be an effortless, low-risk kill. 30 miles, closing fast. 3:54 a.m. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, did not react. No countermeasures, no defensive brake, no climb, no acceleration, no attempt to find terrain masking over the water. It just kept moving, steady and mechanical, like a truck driver who hadn't checked his mirrors. The lead Iranian F-14 pilot's threat scope showed a solid weapons quality lock. Everything was textbook. Everything was clean.
His wingman confirmed the track from a slightly different angle, cross-checking the geometry. Everything was textbook. Everything was clean. 25 miles, still nothing from the A-10. The lead F-14 pilot made a decision that felt, in that moment, completely rational. The American pilot either hadn't detected the lock or had detected it and frozen. Either way, the outcome was the same. He authorized weapons employment and began his targeting sequence. 20 miles, everything was going exactly as planned. And that should have been the warning. In combat, when everything is going exactly as planned, the only question worth asking is, whose plan? 3:56 a.m. The answer was already 40,000 FT above them, and it had been there for 41 minutes. 2 Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning IIs had taken station before the Iranian Tomcats ever received their scramble order. The F-35's radar cross-section is roughly equivalent to a metal golf ball. They arrived early, climbed high, went cold on their active emitters, and disappeared, not by leaving the airspace, but by becoming effectively invisible to every radar system the Iranian Air Force operates. The F-35's radar cross-section is roughly equivalent to a metal golf ball. Against legacy Iranian radar infrastructure, that doesn't mean hard to track, it means not there. A ghost, a nothing, clean air on every scope. For 41 minutes, the F-35 crews watched, passive sensors only, drinking in every radar emission, every radio transmission, every navigational transponder squawk from the Iranian side of the equation. They knew the F-14's exact positions. They knew their headings, their altitudes, their closure rates, their weapons configurations estimated from electronic signatures. They had built a complete real-time tactical picture of the entire engagement while emitting absolutely nothing that could betray their presence. The A-10 pilot knew they were there. He had known since the mission brief. The slow flight, the low altitude, the complete lack of escort, none of it was accidental. Every detail of that flight profile had been calculated to look exactly one thing to an Iranian interceptor crew scanning for targets, a vulnerable, isolated, easy kill. The bait was in the water. The Tomcats had taken it clean. Air 3:58 a.m., 18 miles, the lead F-14 released. The AIM-54 Phoenix dropped from its pylon, ignited, and began its run. For approximately 4 seconds, everything in the engagement still looked like an Iranian victory. The missile was tracking true. The A-10 hadn't moved. The geometry was perfect. Then both F-35s activated their AN/APG-81 AESA radar systems simultaneously. The sound that filled both Iranian cockpits in that instant was the threat warning tone, continuous, urgent, unmistakable. You have 2 radar lock warnings from unknown platforms at unknown positions that your sensors cannot find. Your wingman is shouting. Not one signal, 2, from 2 different bearings at 2 different ranges from 2 aircraft that did not appear on any radar screen either Tomcat was looking at. Total disorientation. Instant. Your missile is already in the air. You have 2 radar lock warnings from unknown platforms at unknown positions that your sensors cannot find. Your wingman is shouting. Your own radar is sweeping clean air and returning nothing. The tactical picture you spent 40 minutes building, the clean geometry, the easy target, the textbook intercept is gone, replaced in under 1 second by something far more dangerous than any missile, the certainty that you do not understand what is happening around you. 03:59 a.m. 30 seconds later. It shifts frequency thousands of times per second. It runs electronic attack modes and passive collection and weapons quality tracking in parallel, simultaneously, without degrading any one function to support the others. The lead F-14 broke hard, left, down, throttles to military power, nose pulling through toward the horizon, the pilot executing a notch maneuver, placing the threat signal at 90 degrees to his flight path, trying to hide in the Doppler blind spot where conventional radar loses track of fast-moving targets against ground clutter. It's a sound tactic. Against 1970s radar architecture, it saves lives. The AN/APG-81 is not 1970s radar architecture. Active electronically scanned array technology doesn't work like a conventional mechanically scanned beam. It manages multiple simultaneous beams. It shifts frequency thousands of times per second. It runs electronic attack modes and passive collection and weapons quality tracking in parallel, simultaneously, without degrading any one function to support the others. The Doppler notch that defeated Soviet-era radar systems is, against an AESA, a maneuver that costs energy and altitude and accomplishes nothing else. 03:99 a.m., 1 Tomcat gone. The lead Tomcat's brake bought it exactly 0 seconds of additional life. The AEM-120 AMRAAM was already off the rail, already running on its own active seeker, already locked onto the F-14's radar return with no further input required from the F-35 that launched it. Active radar homing in terminal phase, autonomous, relentless. The F-35 pilot could have turned for home at that moment. The outcome would not have changed. 03:59 a.m. The lead F-14 came apart at $18,000 FT. The explosion opened over the strait like a brief, violent star, a hard white flash against the pre-dawn black, there and gone in 2 seconds. No ejection, no distress call. The aircraft and everything aboard it entered the water at terminal velocity, and the Strait of Hormuz closed over it without ceremony. 1 Tomcat gone. 03:59 a.m. 15 seconds later, the wingman ran. And that was the right call, possibly the clearest tactical decision made by either Iranian crew across the entire engagement. In the 2 or 3 seconds available, with threat warning screaming, with his lead aircraft just turned into a fireball, with 2 invisible platforms holding lock from positions he still couldn't locate on radar, the second F-14 pilot suppressed everything except the one imperative that mattered: get out. He jammed his throttles forward, pulled his nose toward Iranian airspace, and began jinking hard, irregular heading changes designed to complicate a pursuit-intercept geometry. The F-35s did not pursue. They watched him go. 4:02 a.m. The A-10 Warthog banked lazily and resumed its patrol heading. It had never altered course, never deployed countermeasures, never climbed above 800 ft. The Phoenix missile the Iranian crew launched, the one that initiated the entire sequence, had missed clean. Just 2 simultaneous lock warnings from clean air, a missile that came from nowhere, and a fireball where a $50 million interceptor used to be. Its seeker unable to reacquire a maneuvering target once the engagement geometry collapsed. The Warthog flew on, slow and ugly and utterly untouched, exactly as planned. Somewhere in Iranian airspace, a lone F-14 was racing home with a story that would be very difficult to explain in a debrief. 2 aircraft 1 came back. The target, a slow, lumbering ground attack jet with no air-to-air capability worth mentioning, flew away without a scratch. And the platforms that destroyed the lead F-14, they never appeared on radar, not once, not during the approach, not during the engagement, not during the egress. Just 2 simultaneous lock warnings from clean air, a missile that came from nowhere, and a fireball where a $50 million interceptor used to be. The question that debrief would eventually land on, the one that would keep Iranian air defense planners awake for weeks, was not how did we lose? It was simpler and far more unsettling. How many times had this already happened without them knowing? How many training flights? How many patrol routes? How many carefully practiced intercept profiles had been watched from altitude by aircraft that left no trace on any scope? How many times had Iranian F-14 crews flown through airspace they believed was empty, while F-35s logged their radar frequencies, their communication patterns, their tactical habits, and filed it all away for exactly this kind of moment? The answer to that question has no comfortable lower bound. 4:15 a.m., Strait of Hormuz, back to silence. The water doesn't care about any of this. Ships still move through the choke point. Tankers run their routes. The geography that makes this strip of ocean worth fighting over hasn't changed since the first navies contested it. Speed and firepower were decisive. A long-range radar lock on a slow target was an ending, not a beginning. But the nature of the contest has shifted in ways that legacy platforms, no matter how well maintained, no matter how capable, no matter how experienced their crews, are structurally unable to compensate for. The F-14 Tomcat was once the apex predator of its airspace. In Iranian service, kept alive against extraordinary odds, it remains genuinely dangerous. Do not mistake what happened here for a story about inferior equipment or undertrained pilots. The Iranian F-14 crews did everything right by the tactical doctrine they were trained in. They identified a target, assessed the threat, confirmed their geometry, and prosecuted the engagement. Textbook. The doctrine was the problem. Not because it was wrong, because it was written for a world that no longer exists. In that world, the pilot who saw first and shot first won. Speed and firepower were decisive. A long-range radar lock on a slow target was an ending, not a beginning. In that world, 2 F-14 Tomcats hunting an A-10 over the Strait of Hormuz was a mismatch so lopsided it barely qualified as a fight. But in this world, the one with AESA radar and passive sensor fusion and stealth aircraft that register as golf balls on legacy threat scopes, the decisive variable is none of those things. It is information, specifically the gap between what you know and what your opponent knows about the same airspace at the same moment. Whoever controls that gap controls the engagement, not the pilot with the fastest jet, not the crew with the longest range missile, the crew with the most complete picture of what is actually happening around them. The F-35 crews had a complete picture from the moment they arrived on station. The Iranian F-14 crews never had one at all. They had a partial picture, a slow target, clean geometry, easy kill, and they mistook it for the whole truth.